Is today George Santos' last full day in Congress? I'm Kevin Cirilli. It's time for the Daily Debrief. Today could be Congressman George Santos' last day in Congress. The New York Republican faces an expulsion vote likely at the end of the week after a House Ethics Committee found that he violated fundraising laws. Santos had nothing to say about it. I'm just kidding. He had a lot to say about it.
If I am to get expelled tomorrow, I will be number 6 in the history, the first Republican and the only one without a conviction or without being part of or without having committed treason. Now, if the House wants to start different precedent and expel me, that is going to be the undoing of a lot of members of this body, because this will haunt them in the future.
So there are like 5 members who have been expelled. 3 of them was during the U.S. Civil War. We're almost at the end of that Santos saga. And House Republicans are moving closer to impeaching President Biden, but they still could back out. House Speaker Mike Johnson said that it might be some time to transform their investigation into an impeachment. And Republicans are investigating whether President Biden and his family improperly worked with foreign governments to gain access to business deals. Up until now, Republicans have been unsure as to whether or not there was a case against the president, but they're still weighing their options on the best strategic path forward. And with Congress debating aid for Taiwan, Israel, and Ukraine, and not to mention a potential government shutdown just around the corner in the new year, I want to bring in Congressman John Garamendi. He's a Democrat from California. Congressman, thank you for joining us. Before we get to the news of the day, I first want to play for you the remarks from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer on the floor of the United States Senate. He is the highest-ranking official who is Jewish in Congress. Here he is.
Many of the people who express these sentiments in America aren't neo-Nazis or card-carrying Klan members or Islamist extremists. They're in many cases people that most liberal Jewish Americans felt previously were their ideological fellow travelers.
Congressman, your reaction?
Well, I was driving home late last night. C-SPAN was replaying his entire speech. I caught the early part of it. I got home and I just stayed in the car to listen to the rest of it. It was an extraordinary speech, extremely important speech, in that he laid out very, very clearly the anti-Semitism that is occurring in the United States and really around the rest of the world. That speech should be heard by every American, because it not only speaks to the Jewish people, but it speaks to others in America and others around the world. He did an extremely important piece of work. I intend to go to the floor this week and make sure that his speech is in the congressional record as well as in the Senate record, because it's remarkable. Yeah, it's extremely important.
I remember a lot of folks will remember.
We all ought to pay attention.
A lot of folks will remember that Schumer was moved to tears during the Trump administration when Trump came out with his proposed policies with regards to predominantly Islamic country, and he alluded to that as well in his remarks on the floor. But it comes at a time, Congressman, when your party is openly debating whether or not there should be conditions placed on aid to Israel. Should there be?
Israel needs our support. Israel is our principal ally in the Middle East, and we depend upon Israel for a great deal of our national security in that region and beyond, and they also depend upon us. So our support of Israel must remain strong. Obviously, there is a problem of terrorism. There was a ceasefire in Gaza prior to January 7th. That ceasefire was broken by Hamas when they attacked Israel. Now there's a new ceasefire in place, and hostages are being returned, as are Palestinians that have been jailed in Israel. So that should continue on. I think we're in the 7th or 8th day now, and that's all to the good. But Hamas is a terrorist organization. Have no doubt about that. And they have terrorized Israel for almost more than 2 decades now.
So while that
And so they need to
conversation
be eliminated, no doubt about that.
Well, that conversation is happening with regards to funding for Israel. There's this other conversation on the right with regards to they want to have more border funding to protect the U.S.-Mexico border. Is that something that should be a part of this conversation for supplemental aid ahead of the Christmas recess?
It already is. The president has proposed about $4 billion be used to deal with the issues of the border. Much of that the Republicans would agree to. And there will be a compromise. The president's actually looking to add more than 4,000 agents, judges, other to deal with the continued surge of asylum seekers. And he has proposed some modifications to the current immigration laws and systems, all to the good. Will there be further compromise on this issue? Probably so. But I want to make it very, very clear that Ukraine and Israel need our support now, and that we ought not delay that support as we debate all of the other issues that are out there, whether that is a $4 billion to build American submarines or what we're going to do on the border. Ukraine is now. If we do not support Ukraine in the very near future, this is in the next week or two, then there is a very serious problem with the Ukraine military and the Ukrainian government. If you want to see the explosion of problems in Europe, then watch Ukraine collapse. We must support Ukraine. It is now. Similarly, Israel needs our support. Whether they need $16 billion or less, that can be debated.
So specifically, I know you got to let you go because you got to get back on the Hill. But with regards to this impeachment now that's likely going to happen, as Speaker Johnson laid out earlier this week, is this something that you and your fellow Democrats are prepared for as we enter into next calendar year, and now an election year, mind you, nonetheless, with a potential impeachment now against President Biden?
Well, certainly an election is coming up, but there are two things that are going to precede the election. And that is the two financial cliffs that Speaker Johnson has put in place, one in mid-January, another in mid-February, where there is a possibility that the government will shut down. We have not funded the government for the current fiscal year, let alone what we're going to do in 2024. The appropriation bills have not moved forward. And so if Speaker Johnson wants to waste the time, the very, very precious time that we have to address our national security issues, to address our issues of the economy, to address our issues of every part of the American government by going off and try to do an impeachment process, he should not be the speaker. It is the speaker's responsibility to govern, and that is to get the job done. Right now, he set up a system with two more opportunities in January and February to shut down this government. That would be a serious tragedy for America and for American leadership.
Congressman John Garamendi, Democrat from California, also a San Francisco 49ers fan, but I won't inject too much of my opinion there, but go Eagles. Thank you, Congressman.
Just live with it.
Bye, Congressman. Elon Musk says that you can't blackmail a billionaire. Musk, who owns X, lashed out against advertisers who he says are trying to shut him up on his platform. Big-name advertisers like Disney and Apple, they're leaving the social media site and threatening to do so over anti-Semitic posts that Musk's platform, they argue, has amplified. Bring it on, says the billionaire.
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go yourself. But
earlier this week,
yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
Earlier this week, Musk was in Israel to try to patch things over with Israeli officials, given the percent of criticism with regards to anti-Semitism and hate speech on X. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, one of the most influential geopolitical voices in U.S. foreign policy for decades, is dead. He was 100 years old. Kissinger had an extensive career in national security and foreign policy, serving in the Nixon and Ford administrations, and his influence on global policy was far-reaching. Even after leaving the White House, he was a close advisor to Republicans and Democrats alike. And Americans say that they're ready for another option for the top presidential candidates in the 2024 race. A new no-label survey released this week found that 59% of Americans would consider voting for another choice, like a unity ticket or a third-party run, if the general election status quo of Trump versus Biden is maintained. There's this sense of unpredictability in the 2024 race. And with that, I want to bring in my colleague at The Hill, Julia Manchester. She covers all things 2024. Julia, is there a path for another choice in 2024?
You know, Kevin, I normally say never, so I'm going to stick to that here. However, I do think for certain there is a chance a third-party candidate could certainly shake things up and determine the race either in Biden's favor or Trump's favor.
Well, let me interrupt you, because that's an important thing. Determine versus a path forward. Explain to me that.
Yeah, so essentially this is what you've heard about the criticism towards candidates, or potential candidates, I should say, like Joe Manchin, who seemingly is exploring a presidential bid right now. Democrats argue that he could, a Democrat himself, if he launches another bid, could take votes away from Biden by getting moderate voters who would normally probably vote for Biden between Trump or Biden, and then them in turn voting for Manchin. Now, this goes both sides, though, because we know Robert F. Kennedy Jr., for example, is now running as an independent. He was running as a Democrat, and you heard Republicans sort of making fun of Democrats in that way, saying that he would take votes away from Biden, give them to Trump. But now that RFK has such a wide coalition of supporters, you've seen Republicans very much change their tune on that, because there is the possibility he could take votes from Trump, too.
But see, Julia, you and I have talked about this in the newsroom. I mean, there's this sense of, is President Biden doing enough to ease some of the concerns, not amongst even moderates or the Manchin crowd, but amongst his own party? I mean, you look at the polls, and on the economy, Trump's beating him. On national security and his handling of the Middle East, Trump's beating him. The Republican Party's beating him. How can he turn this around and right the ship? And are Democrats saying, is time running out? Do they need another choice?
So I think you're seeing a couple of things with Biden. First, you are seeing him starting to lean into the economy. He took a trip to Colorado earlier this week and was in Congresswoman Lauren Boebert's district. She's obviously a very vulnerable House Republican. And he was talking about job growth there, talking about consumer confidence, talking about those economic indicators that might work more in his favor than, say, inflation. I think you're also going to see Biden, and he's already doing this, go on the offensive against Trump on healthcare. And Trump sort of gave this to him to talk about when Trump threatened to terminate Obamacare earlier this week. He later said he would instead replace it. But now you are seeing Democrats talk about this quite a bit. And earlier today, you saw the Biden campaign release an ad about Biden's record on healthcare. So you're already seeing this strategy start to form up.
Julia Manchester, I'm going to have to leave it there. If the Fed lowers the rates next year, that could give a boost to the Democrats with regards to that economy handling. Thank you, Julia, as always.
Thanks, Kevin.
Israel and Hamas have agreed to extend the ceasefire one more day, this according to Qatari officials. Secretary of State Antony Blinken traveled to Israel this week to continue to try to hammer out a longer-term peace agreement.
We have seen over the last week the very positive development of hostages coming home, being reunited with their families. This process is producing results. It's important, and we hope that it can continue.
Lawmakers in Washington are continuing to debate funding for Israel. Google is getting ready to delete and destroy email accounts that are inactive. If you haven't logged into an account in more than 2 years, you have until Friday to sign in, or it's going to get deleted. Good luck remembering your old password. To quote Nelly, it's getting hot in here. I wrote that. The United Nations says 2023 is the hottest year in human history. Global temperatures were about 2.5 degrees hotter than average for the first 10 months of the year. And those temperatures make this year the hottest year even before it has ended. The record it hits as the UN is getting ready to kick off a climate summit this week in Dubai. Who runs the world? Apparently Beyonce does. The Renaissance Tour, the Beyonce Renaissance Tour, is now listed as the 7th highest grossing tour in history with 56 shows in 5 months. The tour brought in, get this, $579.8 million in revenue, and it was attended by more than 2.7 million Beyonce fans around the world. She is the only woman and black artist to ever reach the top 10 of the highest grossing tours. The top spot, number 1, if you're curious, is U2, the rock band U2. And be sure to tune in for the final GOP debate of the year on America's fastest growing cable news network, News Nation. SiriusXM's Megyn Kelly, News Nation's Elizabeth Vargas, and the Washington Free Beacon's Eliana Johnson. They're set to moderate the primetime event live from the University of Alabama as the candidates make their case to America on the only network for all America, the News Nation Republican primary debate. Live December 6th at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. And that does it for me with today's Daily Debrief. My name is Kevin Cirilli. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel. And come on back right here for the intersection of policy and politics.